Hey everybody, this is Scott Spratt, fantasy writer for PFF Fantasy. My rushing and receiving yards added metrics evaluate running backs and receivers based on the difficulty of their carries by looking at factors like the down, the distance, the quality of blocking, and air yards on passes. They're less volatile than stats like fantasy points because they distribute credit and penalty to multiple parties on plays, like the quarterback and the defender in coverage. That makes them ideal metrics to evaluate which players enjoying fantasy success can actually maintain that success the rest of the season. And with that in mind, I want to look at some second and third year players that yards added suggests may be enjoying breakout fantasy seasons this year. Let's get that started with Cooper Kupp. Kupp has an impressive total of 44 yards added for the first 3 weeks. And now since the start of the 2017 season, he and Juju Smith-Schuster are second and first in yards added among all receivers. They've actually enjoyed very similar overall production, period. Kupp has 77 catches, 1,055 yards, and 7 touchdowns, while Smith-Schuster has 76, 1,157, and 8. I wanted to compare those two players because I get the feeling that Smith-Schuster's reputation is as an elite fantasy option, an elite future wide receiver in the NFL in general. And Kupp doesn't share that reputation. I think he should. It may be because of their usage, because Kupp spends so much of his time in the slot and has a lower average depth of target, but both players are producing well over their expectations, according to yards added, and I think both can be effective fantasy players the rest of this season and deeper into their future. This might be a great time to trade for Kupp because there's so much excitement around Brandon Cooks in LA. Kupp could be an excellent fantasy option as well. Okay, next up, let's talk about Kenny Golladay, Geronimo Allison, and Will Fuller. All 3 players have been very efficient so far this season, with either 7 or 8 yards added. Allison is actually second among all receivers with 16.1 yards per catchable target, and Fuller isn't too far behind with 14.3 yards per catchable target, 8th best among all receivers. And importantly for fantasy, all 3 of these players have been effective in scoring touchdowns, with 2 touchdowns so far this season. That may not surprise you with Golladay and Allison because they're 6'4" and 6'3" respectively, making them great big options to be catching targets in the end zone. But Fuller's only 6 foot and 184 pounds, so that may be a bit of a surprise. That's why I think it's great to see that he's got 5 targets within 5 yards of the end zone through his first 2 games so far this season. That's tied for the 5th most at the position, even though he's missed one of the 3 Texans games so far this season. I think all 3 of those players are going to continue to have fantasy success the rest of the way, making them excellent plays now for trades in your DFS lineups. Next up, we have Tyler Boyd of the Cincinnati Bengals. He has 5 yards added so far this season and 15.6 yards per catchable target, 6th best at the position. A.J. Green and John Ross have much more hype around them, but neither has been nearly as efficient as Boyd in fantasy. They have 9.5 and 3.4 yards per catchable target this season. Green and Ross have actually been below average in terms of yards added over the last 2 seasons. So I think Boyd can maintain his status as a top 20 fantasy receiver because Andy Dalton's going to want to keep getting him the ball because he's having so much success. Finally, I'll close with a running back in Chris Carson. Carson has 12 yards added as a rusher so far this season, which is much better than rookie teammate Rashad Penny, who has -11. For the first 2 weeks, Carson and Penny split the carries for the Seahawks about evenly, but it looks like Pete Carroll is recognizing that Carson is the much more efficient player, and so last week, Carson took 32 of the Seahawks' 35 carries. I think he's going to maintain that workload the rest of the way because of that efficiency, and so that means that I think Carson can be a running back too, even though the Seahawks are struggling on offense in general. I would definitely take a look at him in trades or maybe in your DFS lineups because he should be an effective player. All right, that's going to do it for me this week. But be sure to subscribe to the PFF Fantasy YouTube channel to check out me and all of the other great PFF fantasy writers who are doing their weekly videos. Thanks so much for watching.